The beginning of organized camping was a post-Civil War phenomenon, and it originates from the gunnery school. And the headmaster there, Mr. Gunn, the kids were excited about learning about and reliving the life of a Civil War soldier. And a lot of that was being out in the bush and camping and sort of fending for yourself. And the concept of more organized camps like we see today started to take hold in the late 1800s. And we start to see around the turn of the century the blossoming of organizations that were creating camps, such as Boy Scouts, YMCA, Salvation Army. By this time, the need was to get kids out of the city in the summertime and to expose them to life in the outdoors. It was a great option for kids where they could learn many skills but live together in an outdoor setting. There was another wave of camp foundings as we get into the 20s, and then a post-World War II wave. We were very strong, as were most camps, until the 60s came, and then there was a bit of a trauma in the industry. I think that it became culturally not as accepted a venue for kids to spend their summer. We also started to see the increase in specialty camps where kids could go to just a soccer camp or a hockey camp or that kind of thing, which took away that base for the traditional all-around experience of a summer camp. Another phenomenon that hit was all these camps, of course, were on beautiful pieces of property, and real estate values in the 60s and 70s started to increase. Many camps that were privately owned went out of business because perhaps the founder, the patriarch, the matriarch of that camp passed on and the children weren't interested, but also incentivized by the fact that the real estate values were quite high and the next generation could simply sell the land. We had a population boom that happened post-World War II, and so the demographic changed dramatically, while at the same time you didn't have all of these specialty camp options. They didn't really come in until the late 60s, 70s. So every kid went to camp in the summertime. That was what you did. There weren't any other options. I mean, it was a great option, but there weren't any other options. And so you saw a growth spurt there. As I mentioned earlier, sort of with the advent of specialty camps and change in culture, and maybe even a change in wealth, because now people had summer homes, so maybe they didn't send their kids to camp. The 50s, 60s, that was a great year in our history here in America in terms of feeling good about ourselves, sort of being in control of our destiny with a robust economy. So we saw that demographic move through, and that culture of sending kids to camp as sort of a core value of our society until we got into the late 60s. And then various dynamics came into play where perhaps societally it wasn't as generally accepted. Camps have structure. A lot of kids, most kids thrive in structure. But in the late 60s of freedom and all that, and the Vietnam War, I think there was a sense of that kind of structure is not really what I want my kid to have. And then you combine that with sort of the end of a generation of the founders of camping and the next generation not wanting the property or not wanting to run a camp and selling the property. So, for instance, right here in Tuftonboro we have 5 different organizations that operate summer camps. A couple of YMCA camps, a church camp, and etc. But all of us are not-for-profit. Those are the ones that have really been able to survive the tough times and thrived. Having been founded in 1913, we will soon be celebrating our 100th anniversary. So we were very much in the forefront of this whole concept of organized camping. We were actually founded by a group of Episcopalians from Massachusetts under the impetus and leadership of a gentleman named William Lawrence, who at the time was the Episcopal Bishop of the Eastern Diocese of Massachusetts. He was an early advocate of camping. Our association, however, with the Episcopal Church ended in the late 60s. So instead of having services on Sundays, which was a traditional part of the old program, we discontinued that, but we certainly brought forward the values that we all share as humans in our global community. Obviously camp back in the teens and 20s was a much more rustic place where it was much more of a tent type of organization versus a cabin-based organization. But always, as I look back and read some of the material about our long history, we see that they did hikes up Mount Major, which we still do. I don't think they had quite as an extensive an out-camping program. Transportation was a lot more difficult in the old days. Kids would come up on the train from North Station and be picked up in Ossipee on all gravel, basically horse-drawn buggy roads. So certainly things have changed, and it's widened our ability to use more of the outdoors here in northern New Hampshire and in New England. We've had to evolve our facilities to accommodate, the baseball field used to be out on the knoll, which is a hillside, and we've got now a beautiful baseball field. Soccer was not a sport that many kids played 50 years ago, and now it, over the last couple decades, has been a primary sport. So we have a soccer field. I think we've certainly matured the whole athletics part of the program and facility to accommodate it. Riflery and archery, I think, have sort of always been one of those core camp-type activities. We've been able to add the clay sports aspect of things, so we're shooting clay pigeons with shotguns, which the kids really enjoy. Fishing is always, that went back to that water-based fishing, and we've matured that to not just throwing a worm on a hook, but fly fishing and fly tying. Nobody 25 years ago knew what a challenge course or a ropes course was. It hadn't been defined. So we've added a beautiful ropes course, low elements, high elements, the climbing tower. So camps have evolved to accommodate the trends of the time while continuing to sort of maintain that core base of living in the outdoors, learning to swim, being on water, paddling a canoe.